Welcome to bLU Talks. Well, welcome back, everybody. As you got to see earlier today, we did an interview as part of kind of like, I consider it like a podcast video type interview. I think it's kind of cool because I started doing podcasting in 2002. So I think that makes me like an OG. And I started doing podcasting that long ago, and it was always like, you're in a room by yourself, and if you're interviewing the person, back then it was over phone. You weren't even doing Zoom or video. And so I think it's so cool that now we can actually do podcast interviews live in front of an audience. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what I view this like. Mm-hmm. So without taking any more of the time though, I wanted to get Art, as you saw earlier, I always get the guests to tell us a little bit about themselves to kick things off. So Art, can you tell us just a little bit about who you are for the audience, and then we'll dive right in.
Sure. Well, one thing I'll tell you is that I did not expect to land. I never would have known that I landed where I did, which is helping high-tech companies with B2B sales and consultative selling. It's not where I started. I started as a mechanical engineer. And I got involved very early. This goes quite a long time ago, speaking about telephones and things, before there was really much computer anything. It was 2D drafting. It was 3D modeling made of actual physical models for things. But right at that point in time is when the computer technology started, and I got so interested in that, I didn't do engineering anymore. I did implementation of computer applications for engineering. So I used my background, but I applied it toward the information technology. That led to sales and sales marketing positions, both pre-sales and post-sales, and a salesperson. And then about 25 years ago, I moved into sales enablement, where I used my knowledge of how I had done sales to help others do sales. And I've had my own company for 15 years, but I never knew that I would land here. It wasn't like I said, that's where I want to be. It just evolved.
So, I mean, for me, this is a passion area because I spent so many years in sales myself, and I sold photocopiers door to door for 10 years. If anybody wants to do that, let me know and I'll hook you up. Trying to convince somebody that they need to replace the yellow photocopier in the office that they haven't looked at in 5 years with a white one and spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to do it is not so easy. I've had real estate people and life insurance people tell me that selling photocopiers is harder than selling life insurance.
I might have one better than that though. I sold vacuums.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And here's the thing about it, is that it was the one with the water, the rainbow. If anybody's familiar, it's phenomenal. Somebody gave a demonstration to me. I loved it so much, I said, I want that. It was $1,400 way back in the day in the 80s. So I said, I'm interested in getting one. They said, well, if you sign up as a salesperson and you sell 5 within 7 days, you can have a free one. Guess what I did? I sold 5 in 7 days. I got my free one and I checked out. So
you didn't keep selling?
No, I didn't need to. I got what I wanted.
I love it. Well, and I will say, the further back you go, I think the harder the sales, well, I'm gonna say harder they were, but the more unique things you had to sell. So like I think back to like Zig Ziglar selling encyclopedias door to door and pots and pans door to door. I mean, that just blows my mind. And we used to have a person in the photocopier world. He worked, I forget which country it was in, but it was a country where there was no vehicles or anything. And he was selling fax machines and they were bringing them in somehow. And he would strap them on his back and drive up a hill. And the deal was he'd stay all day to sell it because he didn't want to carry it back down.
Yeah. That's a good incentive.
Yeah, and they were really expensive. And he said the hardest part was you were selling a fax machine to somebody who didn't know anybody who had a fax machine. So he said you'd try to bring 2 because you'd say, well, don't you want to fax your neighbor Marcy? So, I mean, sales, I think sometimes sales gets a bad rap. And at the same time, I don't think people realize how much of our world revolves around sales and how important it is to have salespeople. So to dive into sales a little bit, one of the things you said as far as the tech side is I think that's a challenge area for a lot of people is if you're a tech person. We used to have a guy who was the IT guy, and he ended up doing great at sales because he knew the equipment so much better than everybody else. Right. But he was one out of 10, the only one that could actually communicate with a customer whatsoever.
Right.
So when you're working with people that are the tech side, how do you help that? Because you're trying to change a whole personality. Like you're trying to change a person that's not used to talking with a person maybe and communicating, and getting them comfortable with that, and also learning skills. So how do you do that?
Yeah, and I mean, I lived through that because, like I said, I started as an engineer. I'm kind of a recovering engineer right now. I use it when I need to, and I put it in the box when I don't need to. But it is true, and the thing is, when you're technologically capable, that's what you love doing. And many times, like you said, it's a person that's wired a little different, more analytical, more physical, wants to roll the sleeves up and get things done. And even back in the day, the salesperson needed somebody like that because they couldn't do it themselves. So I started as an application engineer, where I was the one that could make it work for the salesperson. Now, how do you get that to change? Well, I think it's just the whole evolution of sales is, it's not about what you're selling, it's about what the benefit is somebody else is getting. So one of the ways to help somebody that's highly technical, what we would call a pre-sales person or a sales engineer now, or solution architect, there's a lot of terms for it, is to realize that what you have has no inherent value. Whatever you have that you're offering, and that goes for everybody really in the audience too, whatever we have has no inherent value. So even though it's the coolest thing, it's maybe the best thing, it doesn't matter to whoever your audience is or your customer unless they understand how it helps them. So this is about translating the stuff into why would they care? And the only way to know that is by asking questions. So one of the big skills is questions, which engineers are good at that because they like to listen, diagnose, they got curiosity in things. So if you are more technical in sales, take that curiosity, and instead of thinking about solving the problem or providing a solution, think about the other person and what are they going through, what do they want out of it, and then how do I map what I have to what they need? And I describe it as like a Venn diagram. So here's their needs, here's the solutions. There's a lot we can provide that's not relevant. There's a lot they might want that we can't provide. So where the overlap is where value is. And once the whole sales team understands that, now the salesperson can do their business selling part of it with the contract and everything else, and the technical person knows how to plug in. So they're all speaking to the same language of what's the value we can bring.
I love it. It's like, what do they say, that nobody wants a 3-inch bolt or whatever. They want a 3-inch hole. Or whatever it is,
the drill. It's the drill bit.
Yeah, nobody wants a 3-inch drill bit, but what they do want is a 3-inch hole.
Right.
And so I love that, and I will say I experienced this whenever I was selling photocopiers. Is we had an old guy, and I say old guy, I mean he was like the senior guy that was there for 20 years, top sales rep. The numbers he did, sales numbers, nobody had ever even come close in like 20 years in the history. And just for context, it was like 500,000, let's say, in sales, which in some industries that sounds small, like computer industry, but in other industries like copiers, that's a lot. To sell back then a $10,000 copier was a big sale. So he did like $500,000, and the next closest was 300,000. Well, the next year, and by the way, when he sold it was like, do you want a sorter with that? That was the technology. And then what happened was the next year, whenever I started, I was a couple of years in, it switched to like connecting these devices. Now you could print to them, scan to them. He went from $500,000 that year to $100,000 and fired the next year. But when he went into customers, this is why I bring this up, they would say, well, why should we go with you? He goes, we have scanned to email. And then the customers say, what does that mean? He said, I have no idea. He just heard like, okay, we have this and other people don't yet, or our scan to email's faster by half a second. Does that matter?
Yeah.
Probably not. So, but here's what I discovered is I went in and talked to customers. So your point about the questions, and I found out what's your biggest problem. So I would talk to the CEO, 400-person company, 3 floors, and I would say, what's your biggest issue? Time. I never have enough time. And I would say, well, tell me a bit about your day. And they would say, well, if I get this fax or whatever that comes in, or whatever it might be, I have to then go and distribute to Robert, let's say, and he's down at the other end of the hall. But the problem is, on the way to Robert, 7 employees stop me. And let's say I lose 3 hours, let's just say as an example. And so I started getting in my head, well, what if I could replace those 3 hours? What if I could take that away from you? And I said, how much is your time worth an hour? And most of them knew. And so let's say they said $600 an hour. So it's okay, your time's worth $1,800 a day. Or you're losing $1,800 a day, whatever that is a month, right? Like that's 18,000 times 3, whatever that is, almost 60,000 a month. And I said, if I could take away those problems and therefore remove that $60,000 in your time, it's gone now, you get it back, and it's going to cost you $600 a month. What would you say?
Yeah.
I'm in. Where do I sign?
Correct.
And so what I would say is how I'm going to do that is I'm going to use this. You don't even need, and I'd say to CEOs, most red personalities, they don't care. I say you don't even need to know the name, but let's just say for argument's sake, it's called scan to email. But what it's going to do is instead of you going to Robert down the hall, we're going to put one in Robert's office and one in your office, and you're just going to send it to Robert. You're going to scan it, and it's going to go, and you're done. And you never left your office. I'm in.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is all of a sudden now I'm not competing with the other copy rep who's charging $550, which is less than me, because they're not telling them about that. I just showed him how I can change his day, and I'm giving him the solution versus this technology, which is the feature of scanned email. So I hope I'm right in that, but that's what I figured out that made the difference for me.
Well, it is. It's a huge difference. And key thing is, what do they consider as value? So different people have different value to them. Some people it's time, some it's money, some it's actually people, like doing more with less people, or unfortunately getting rid of some people and things like that. So understanding what it is they need. The other interesting thing, and I actually did a bLU talk on this in Miami, was that yes, value is the thing that should sell. So you showed them how you've got more value than what it takes for him to do that. And that totally makes sense. The other thing for everybody to think about is on the other side of the equation is risk and cost. So you did the cost thing. So it's like 600 versus 6,000 or whatever, no brainer. The 6,000 outweighs the cost. But the other big thing is the risk. So a lot of people, and we're all selling against not just named competitors, or they could go with you or they could go with somebody else. We're selling against do nothing. And this is where the risk part comes in, and that's the big challenge now is a lot of people just stick with status quo. We heard Darius talk about that earlier in terms of stay with your cash position instead of trying to jump in the market right now and things. So the risk is a big factor, because if the risk and the cost outweigh the perception of the value, you're not going to have a sale either. So it gets really interesting. And the higher up in the organization you go, the different type of risk there is. Like risk to the company. Like, is it going to put our company under versus what's the value for our customers?
Well, I feel like with sales, and it's not an easy task to do. I mean, I could do it easy in that circumstance I gave you, but it's not as easy when we're selling a service and to figure this out. But I feel like one great strategy is if you can show the cost of doing nothing with actual dollars. So in that case, again, let's just throw the random. I mean, the numbers were insane there because of it, he was valuing his time. But let's say he says his times were $60,000 a month. That's $720,000 a year. Instead of whatever 600 times 12, 7,200. So your cost of doing nothing now is like over $500,000.
Yeah.
So, but that's easy because I could show the numbers. But if you, I mean, I think in a perfect world, if you could show people the cost of not doing a bLU talk means that you won't get this, this, and this, and showing the value, it becomes a no-brainer. But it's hard to show with a service.
Well, and a lot of people, there's different studies, and it's said that people are more motivated by fear or a problem than they are by a gain or a benefit. So even though you can demonstrate there's a benefit and you would think they'd move forward, it is sometimes better to flip it and say what you're missing out on.
Right.
So not only did you help him with that, but also what could he have been doing in the meantime? It's not even the cost of his time. What could he have been doing in the meantime that he wasn't able to do? So that's like a loss that he has as opposed to just the gain. And I think both is important. So it's really, what's the gain you're going to get, and then what's the downside of the risk of staying with what you have? What's the cost of staying with the risk you have? It's very interesting, and it whether you're trying to persuade somebody about buying something at an auction, like we were talking about,
or getting the deck done.
Yeah, right, their deck, or whether it's just a human interaction, like trying to make a decision in at your church or in your community or whatever, knowing that different people have different ideas of value. And at the same time, they're assessing what the risk is to them, maybe personally, or how they look, or financially. Those are all components that go into it. And the more complex the sale, the more those components become important to figure out.
Amazing. Well, my last official question is what I call the passenger question. You heard me ask it earlier, but basically, and I'm shifting gears a bit with this question, but ultimately, the question is really, if you were on a plane with a stranger, they lean over and said, Art, now they might not know your name, but they lean over and said, Art, I need some life advice or advice in general. What do you think you might tell a stranger on a plane?
I would ask them a question. I would ask them, tell me more about what's going on. What are you talking about? I would get them to clarify, what do they mean by that? Because there's a million different directions I could go. And once again, I might tell them something that's absolutely true, could be exactly the right thing, but if it's not what they want at that time, or if they don't realize that I've taken an interest in them first, they might just dismiss it out of hand as something that's not relevant. So I would just start asking, tell me a little bit about what you do, or what are you looking for? because there's a lot of things. And that's a great thing in sales too, is if you've got a lot of stuff, don't be tempted to just start showing stuff. That'd be like showing the 3-inch drill bit and the 4-inch chipper and the, you know, I don't care for all that. What I'm trying to do is I want a whole.
Right.
So let's find out what they really want first and ask that to understand more about them. And innately, and we've heard a lot of talks recently at our bLU Talks in Columbia University, is it's about the other person. It's not about you. So even that connection and empathy and getting in their mind and help them understand, I'm not trying to sell something. I'm helping you with whatever. And in this case of the passenger, it might be a problem, it might be advice, it might be whatever. I would just find out more about them so that I can then help in the right way. And maybe I can't help, and that's okay too.
Amazing, I love it. So our last question, the unofficial one, is how can we learn more? People want to learn more about this. Maybe they're struggling with sales, maybe they want to understand sales methodology better, or whatever that looks like. Is there a hub or a place you would send them?
Well, there's 2 main places. My website is teamsalesdevelopment.com. So just teamsalesdevelopment.com, and it really is the theme of what I do. It's helping sales teams work together better. And then LinkedIn, so I'm just Art Fromm on LinkedIn. I think I might be the only one. There's other Fromms, but I might be the only Art Fromm.
With 2 M's too.
2 M's, thank
Yes.
you. Yes, F-R-O-M-M. Yes.
I love it. Art, this has been an absolute pleasure. So I thank you so much. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.